All right, so welcome back. So today we are actually going to take a look at how to set up our chart of accounts. Now, as we come here, right, we're going to be actually practicing how to be able to open up a portable file and how to successfully save it onto your desktop. So as you can see here, we are here, and it says that in order to be able to continue on with this chapter, we're going to be needing the portable file called Setup 18. Okay, so now that we see this right here, let's go ahead and get started. So as we see, every time we open up our QuickBooks, right, we see that we're going to be getting this little home page or this main page right here, right? The gray background, and then you see the options right here on what you want to do. First option down here on the left corner is to open or to create a new company file. And in the center right here, we have the option to either open or restore an existing file. And then right here on the right side is going to be your sample file right here. Now, as we keep going on with QuickBooks and we open up our files and portable files and whatnot, what happens is that when we open up either a portable file or a backup file, essentially we are creating a working data file. And as you can see right here, these are the last working data files that we actually just previously worked on. Now, with that being said, if you double click on one of these, it's going to automatically take you into your last working file. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to open up an existing portable file. So as we come right along here, we're going to go straight here and click on open and restore the existing file. Now, when we come here, there are three options that we can choose from. We can either select the working data file, we can either open up a backup file, or the last option that we want is going to be opening up a portable file. So by clicking on this, and you're going to click on the next. Now what's going to happen is it's going to give you this little window that's going to ask you to locate the file that we're looking for. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and go to this little triangle here, and we're going to drop down that menu, and we're going to go ahead and locate our student portable file. So as we know, I've located it. It's going to be in my LVPTA folder, Accounting QuickBooks class. And then I'm going to go ahead and click that student portable files, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at that Fundamentals QuickBook Student 2018 classroom files. Okay. From here, we are instructed that we want to open up our setup file. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll to search for it. And here we are, setup 18. Okay. So once I double click on that, now the next step is to find a location on whether it's your desktop or your documents. And what's going to happen is it's going to convert the existing portable file or a backup file, and it's going to create a new working data file. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and click that next button, and now the first thing it's going to do is it's going to ask me to find a folder for me to go ahead and create my working data file, to save the file on my local C drive. Now, the first thing it's going to say, it's going to have you try to save it on the local C drive. In this case, most cases, oftentimes, you may not have permission for this particular part. So I do recommend you to either save it on your portable flash drive or save it on whether like your desktop or even your documents. So in this case, I actually already have a pre-existing folder itself. It's going to be in my documents. Okay, and as we go here, we're going to go to LVPTA Accounting QuickBooks class again, and then we're going to go back to that QuickBooks portable file once again. And here I have a couple classes that I have already saved here, so I'm going to go ahead and go to one of those folders, and then I'm going to go ahead and click Save. Once I have that save button, you're going to get this little window here that's going to tell you it's creating or it's opening the working data file. Okay? So as you can see, depending on how fast your internet is or how fast your processor, your computer processor is, will determine how long it will take to open up a working data file. So as you can see here, because this will only happen if you do have mixed match data. Now here it's going to ask me to enter in my password. All right. So for this class, every single student portable file that we open, all right, the password is going to be capital S L EETER 18. Okay. And then, so this is this window pops up on my end because I am currently using QuickBooks 2019 Pro. I'm actually using a later edition, and I'm also using a different edition of QuickBooks. However, the great thing about that is you can convert the existing data file, right? Doesn't matter what year it is, at least 3 years prior. So in this case, because I'm using a 2018 portable file and I'm converting it and trying to opening it into a 2019 program, I have to actually run it through some updates so that it's going to actually start creating a 2019 working data file. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click that update now, and it's going to take a couple minutes to go ahead and update my file. So, yes. All right, this also depends on your internet as well because it is taking things from the internet to go ahead and update the QuickBooks file, portable file to the most latest and release file, so it's compatible and it works. So there you go. Now I've reached it, and here I get the You're All Set window. I'm going to go ahead and click Next or Finish. Now, this will depend on various QuickBooks applications that you have. If you do get this pop-up, it says right here that I need to log into my Intuit account. If most cases, some QuickBooks don't require you to do this, so you can go ahead and bypass that. You're not obligated to sign in your account at any given time unless you are willing to use QuickBooks to upload your company file online. Then yes, you definitely want to sign in for this one. But in this case, I don't need to, so I can bypass that. All right. Once I've bypassed all that things, what's going to happen next is now QuickBooks is going to actually start opening its file. It's going to start by the home page, and it's also going to start by loading my icon bar. And then you may get a few pop-ups here and there, whether it's a few promotional items, discounts, whatever it is. You can close all those out as well. So because I am using the 2019 version, it's going to pop up to me some new features that I can learn while using QuickBooks. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and close this window right here as well. Okay, so then here it also tells me, well, what's so new about the new upgrading from 2018 to the 2019 files. And I'm going to go, and they usually disappear after a couple seconds, so you can go ahead and bypass that. So as you can see, here I am, and this is the home page. As you can see, the home page, as we talked about in Chapter 1, is a graphic depiction of every transaction in the workflow that exists. So as you can see, my top one up here, I have my purchases, right, of inventory. My purchase order flows into inventory, which flows into entering bills, which then flows into actually making payments to my bills. Okay, same thing down here, right? We got entering our invoices, right? And then all the way to receiving payments, to all the way down to actually depositing our payments. So with that being said, that is going to be your home page for you. And in chapter 7, we do talk about how we are able to customize the home page, icon bar, and so on and so forth. But for today, we are primarily focused on understanding how the chart of accounts works. So as I've mentioned before and in your reading, right, the most important thing about setting up the chart of accounts is you need to have the chart of accounts before you can even start a transaction. The most important about this is you need to be able to list out every single transaction that you can think of, because ultimately the goal here is when we start recording our transactions, we need to categorize our transactions, or we need to be able to organize our transactions into certain ideas and thoughts. So for this kind of idea here, with the chart of accounts, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at how we can set it up and how we can either add, delete, edit our accounts. Okay. So as we saw briefly through the easy step interview, we got to take a look at a generic set of accounts, right? We got to build a very basic generic chart of accounts, all right? Now, with that being said, we need to understand how the chart of accounts is actually organized. So as it is organized, it's going to be organized based on account type. Now, first, let's go ahead and locate how we're able to actually get to take a look at our chart of accounts. So there are a total of 3 ways that we can take a look at our chart of accounts, right? So again, first thing is going to be on your home page. You have it right here at the very top of your company little section here, top right. You have the first icon is going to be your chart of accounts icon. Okay, so that's one way to get there. Second way you can get there is if you go on your list menu, you can go ahead and take a look at the very top. The very first thing that you see is your chart of accounts. Okay, there you go, chart of accounts. And you can also find the chart of accounts on your company menu bar. Because it's under your company on your home page. It also exists here on the menu bar. Okay, so since I'm already here, I'm going to go ahead and click on it. Now notice this and look very carefully. So as you can see, the chart of accounts, it's a list of every single account or every single transaction that can exist in QuickBooks, or in this case for your particular company, right? So most oftentimes what happens is before even having or setting up your company file, right? And before even starting your transaction, actually setting an ideal or even an idea of what typically accounts that you would normally use, such as, again, your checking account. You're going to be definitely using that because you're going to be needing that to collect money, but also to be able to write your checks out to pay your bills. Okay. Other things that we have here that could be potentials or things that should be automatically in there is going to be your inventory asset account as well as your sales account, because the intention here is that those are going to be transactions that we will incur as we go use QuickBooks to keep track and record of our transactions as we do our business. Our business primarily, as we set it up in our Easy Step interview, we said that we sell and provide services. So we sell products and we also provide services. So with that being said, then all of those items are going to be, things that you should have in your chart of accounts. Okay. So now we're going to talk about account type. We talked about this in chapter 1, where you have a total of 5 account types. All right. You have your assets, your liabilities, your equity, your revenue / income, and lastly, you have your expenses. Now, understanding that there are 5 and 5 only. All right. Now, here's a little thing that you should know, that when we look at our chart of accounts, notice this. Everything is going to be organized based on account type. All right. As you can see here in this little chart here, my assets go first. Okay. Then my liabilities go next. Okay. And then my equity is next. Then my income. And then lastly are my expenses. For some reason, QuickBooks actually likes to organize it as assets, liabilities, equity, income, expenses, other income, and then other expenses. It's weird, but that's how they do it. So it should be, all the income in one and then all of the expenses in the other. But that's okay. It's not such a big deal. So understanding that there are other income and other expenses, they're going to be at the very end. Okay. Now notice this. A lot of my accounts, they have these little account balances. We call those registers. All right. Now here's a fun fact. When we talk about registers are going to be what's called our permanent accounts. They always have to stay open and they always have to have some kind of value to it or some kind of account balance to it. Okay. So again, my permanent accounts are going to be my assets, my liabilities, and my equity. Those ones are always going to have some kind of account balance to them. And then notice this. All of my income and all of my expenses don't have any account balances. Those are called quick reports, okay? They only have quick reports. Now, the reason why they have quick reports is because they actually close out at the end of any given period, okay? Now, why do they close out? It makes sense because it is the perfect way to measure profitability, okay? When we understand that the underlying concept that when we do incur or have those expenses or have our sales, we're never going to reflect the same sales every single month. For expenses, yes, we do have those. Those are called fixed expenses, but maybe this month you have a promotion or there's a holiday coming up, so you need to incur extra advertising expense. So in this kind of concept, it's the best way to be able to measure profitability by closing them out and starting over and measuring from square one and all the way up to the end of the given period. Okay? Whereas your permanent accounts, if you think of it this way, if you were to close out your bank account, which is your asset, right? What does that even mean? It means you are no longer doing business and that you're closing up for good. So that's one of the reasons why that kind of permanent account must always stay open, okay? It can never close out at any given period, okay? So with that being understood, those are how the account types work, and that's how they're organized, all right? So, of course, in your book, it's going to talk about using account numbers, okay? So as we look here in my chart of accounts, I don't have account numbers, all right? it is not necessary to have account numbers. However, from experience of accounting, what you're going to notice is that it's kind of like a Morse code. Once you adapt and you understand that a specific account has a specific 5-digit number, you're going to associate that it's a lot easier to remember numbers than it is to remember 5 words. Okay, so in this case, instead of memorizing checking, the word checking, right? Of course, it's a pretty simple word, but as we progress and go through these transactions, you're going to notice that every time you use checking, it's going to be 10-100, 10-100, 10-100, all right? Now, of course, you don't need to use it, but imagine you having to memorize over 200 account names. Now, realistically, you're going to start shortening them up, or you're going to start, kind of thinking that you have it. Like, for example, we shorten accounts receivable as AR, right? You start making, short devices to memorize what accounts that you do actually have. So that's why it's you can, if it helps you, to utilize account numbers if it makes sense to you to use, okay? Now, as you notice here, we don't have account numbers, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how to turn them on. So as we go to our little window up here, we're going to go ahead and go to our edit on our menu bar, and we're going to go ahead and click those preferences. So as you can see, we're going to go ahead and click on accounting on the left side and make sure that we are on the company preferences. Now, the first thing it's going to say here is use account numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and I'm going to click OK. Now, because my chart of accounts is open, right, it automatically updated my settings, and it updated it with those account numbers, okay? And it started in a sequence. Now, because we start using, now that we activated our account numbers, every time we enter in a brand new account, we need to also start linking up a sequence number, so then every time we enter in a new account, it has a number assigned to it. It's not going to automatically assign a number unless you turn off your account numbers and then reassign them again. Now, you want to be very careful with that, just because sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, okay? So, yes, I actually prefer to use account numbers because, again, from years of experience, it's a lot more easier because instead of having to identify 5 words or identify accounts receivable, I can just identify it as 10-200 or 10-100, 10-300, whatever it is, okay? So there you go. That's how you turn on the account numbers, okay? So as we go ahead and go back to our book and we keep going on, the next section that we're going to actually be taking a look at is going to be how to modify our chart of accounts. First thing we're going to do is we're going to learn how to add. We're going to add a new account. We're going to learn how to edit a new account, delete, and lastly, we're going to learn how to merge our accounts, okay? Now, first off, I'm going to show you how to go ahead and enter in a brand new account. So once you're in your chart of accounts, there are 2 ways that you can enter in a new account. If you go down to this very bottom of this window, you're going to see that there's a little tab that you can click on. So as you can see, there's account at the bottom here. There's archives, and then there's reports that you can do. And each one has a little drop down triangle. If you click on account here, the first thing that you have is new. Okay. And then of course the easiest shortcut way to do it is to, as well as once you're in your chart of accounts, anywhere on your chart of accounts, you can right click and you can also click new here. So since I'm already here, I'm going to go ahead and click new. So the first thing it's going to ask you to do is it's going to ask you to identify what account type it is associated with. What account are you creating and what type is it? Okay? So in this case, we're going to be actually creating an expense account. Okay? So as you can see right here, expense. And then I'm going to go ahead and click continue. So first thing it's going to say is you have a few things that you need to add in here. All right? So first thing is, what's the account name? The account name, in this case, we're going to go ahead and place entertainment here. Okay? Because I'm creating an entertainment account. Okay? Entertainment. Expense. Okay? And of course, your description, right? You can explain what that means or what that really is. In this case, it's kind of self-explanatory. It's entertainment expense. Okay? All right. Now, other things that you should note as far as that is that if in case you need to use a sub account, which meaning when we have a main account, you can break it down to even further down into sub accounts. Okay, you only use that if you have a subheading above it. In this case, I don't. My entertainment expense is going to be a regular main account. So in this case, I don't need any extra stuff to break it down even further. All right. And of course, I need to have an account number because I associated making myself have account numbers. So I believe this is going to be 62400. All right. And I got a pop-up window saying that that this account number has been used. Okay. So I need to enter in another number. So I believe it was 62600. Okay. So that number hasn't been used yet. So once I get that beep of approval, then as I look in my chart of accounts, here it populates it in alphabetical order because somehow I was able to get it there. So as you can see here, we have it right here. The first thing when you do that, it does highlight it right away and it leaves it right there, okay? But for any reason that I forgot to enter in a number, or for instance, I didn't put a number in there, I can always go back and edit it at any time. I can either right click on that exact account and click edit account, or I can actually go down to the very bottom left corner where it says account on it, and then you're able to click that drop down menu and be able to edit that account. So for any reason that you've made a little typo error or anything like that, you can modify it at any given time. Okay. Now and if I didn't have it, it's going to automatically go all the way to the very, very top of the list of my expenses. Okay. So that's how we determine that one right there. Okay. Now, there's a few things that you also need to know when it comes to actually editing and modifying our stuff here, right? The more you modify it, make changes to it, it's going to affect all of your information that in case you did use this account before, it's going to actually make slight changes to them, okay? Now, the next section I'm going to also talk about now, see, as easy as that, that's how you go ahead and add a single account in here. All right. Now, there are ways that you can actually import an entire spreadsheet if you have one, because most cases when you are an existing company, you're going to already have your chart of accounts already set up, or you have at least a spreadsheet of all your chart of accounts. All right. And what you can do is if you are starting from scratch, you can actually import it through using Excel or even using some form of spreadsheet, you can import it in here and make it a lot more quicker. But in this case, that's a little more advanced learning of QuickBooks, so I'm not going to show it to you because it does not tell you how to do it in the book. So it is definitely I'm not going to go ahead and teach it. Okay. So now that we got to take a look at adding an account and we got to take a look at how to edit an account, other things that we're going to be looking at is deleting an account. Now, QuickBooks rule of thumb is you should never, ever, ever delete an account, okay? Even if you used it or not, all right? Because that gives us, a possibility for us to mess up a lot of our transactions that exist in our books already. If we used an account and we decided to one day just delete it, then you're going to have a lot of holes in your reports and a lot of discrepancies along the way because you use that transaction to categorize an expense or whatever it is. Now, the best rule of thumb is that they do recommend you to inactivate it. Okay. Now, given with QuickBooks, right, we just created this account, so you can easily go ahead and delete it because, this is for practice purposes only. But for rule of thumb, if the account you've created it and you've absolutely not touched it in, 5 years, maybe, something like that, and you've never used it, you created it just in case one day that you'll be able to use it, you can go ahead and delete that. That is okay because that will not affect any transaction whatsoever. But if you have used an account, they recommend you to inactivate it, right? And in order to do that, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to go back down to this left accountant and you're going to go ahead and click Make Account Inactive, like that. And notice this, it disappeared from my list. Okay? You can also right click it and also make it inactive as well. Okay? Make account inactive. Okay? Now that I've done to those two accounts, the question is now that you no longer see it anymore, right? Every time you run your reports, they're all hidden in the background. However, if let's say one day you need that account and you decide to reactivate it, you can actually locate that by going to the very, very bottom of this window. So as you can see, when we go across this little window right here, you're going to see this little button that says inactive or include inactive, okay? If I go ahead and click that check mark box, what you're going to notice is my accounts are going to pop up and they all have an X right next to them. That means they are inactive. And you can easily just select it and make it active again. All right? Make account active. All right? Or the easiest way to be able to reactivate or to activate it again, you could just go ahead and click the red X. And boom. Now my accounts has reappeared on my window again. Okay? So 2 things here is no, you cannot delete anything. You just inactivate it. All right? Unless you've never used that account whatsoever. But general rule of thumb is for any accounting at all to avoid any mishaps or any fraud, you definitely don't want to delete anything that's in your books. Okay? So that's how you delete / inactivate your accounts. So now the next thing that we're going to be looking at is going to be merging. All right. So let's notice this here. let's notice these accounts that we see here. We have entertainment as where is it? 600. Now notice this. We have an account called Meals and Entertainment, number 64300. All right? So as we progress through our chart of accounts, you're going to be constantly updating, adding, deleting a lot of accounts. And as you go through the accounts, you have the option to quick add an account at any given time. All right, so the you don't technically have to have your chart of accounts already there. If you need to make an account that doesn't exist in your books, you could go ahead and create it right then and there. Now, the only downside to that is that oftentimes when if you're not the only accountant using this book and you have multiple people putting their hands into this in this QuickBooks, you can only imagine that oftentimes that a lot of employees or whatever it is, accountants, they will actually start entering a lot of adding a lot of accounts that may exist already. Okay, they might type in a few words, they don't see it, they quick add it, and then after after looking through the chart of accounts one more time, they realize that they actually created another account that essentially is the same thing, that does the same thing. Okay, maybe a couple variations of words difference. Okay, so in this case, we have entertainment and we have entertainment and meals and entertainment. All right, so here's the rule of thumb here. In order for you to successfully merge your account, you're going to go ahead and determine which account you actually want to keep. So in this case, we want to keep meals and entertainment. Okay, so that means let's go ahead and just take a look at it real quick. Meals and entertainment, and it's 64300. We need to memorize everything that looks the same about this, okay? And then we're going to go ahead and look at the one that we don't want. We don't want the 62600 entertainment. We want to convert this entertainment expense, and we want it to reflect the one that we want, which is the meals and entertainment. So how are we going to do that? We're going to go ahead and edit the information. So I'm going to right click on it, or I can go down to the bottom and click on it. And I'm going to go ahead and click that edit account. All right. And what you're actually going to do is you are actually going to type in word for word the exact title of the account that you want. So in this case, it's meals and entertainment. Okay? And because we are using account numbers as well, you need to match both name and account number, which it was 64300. Okay, make sure the description doesn't have to be the same because they're just going to end up merging together with each other. But you need to make sure that those things need to happen. All right, the account must look identical to the account that you want it to be. And once I click that save and close button, I'm going to get an error message window. It's going to say, this account number already exists. Would you like to merge these accounts? And this is where you go ahead and select yes. All right. Now, if you have your sound on, it took a snap picture of this exact transaction. Now, notice this. I no longer have 62600. It doesn't exist anymore. My entertainment is gone. And I only have meals and entertainment as 64300. All right. So here's a good thing about it. All right. Now that you consolidated and made your your chart of accounts less cluttered. However, the bad thing about that is once you click that yes button, you can never undo it. Okay? You can't undo a merge. Once it's done, it's done. Okay? If you let's say one day you just realize that you shouldn't have merged them together. The only way you're going to be able to utilize them as two separate ones is by using a backup file. Okay? Or creating a complete new account and starting forth new again. Now, with that idea, that means it also applies to if you've been using both accounts separately, what's going to happen is the day that you merge it, you're not going to be able to reflect or know which one came first. Okay? They're going to become indistinguishable as soon as you merge them. Okay? So the only way you'll be able to know which account came first is by looking into your past previous QuickBook files. Okay? All right. So that's it for as far as understanding how to modify the chart of accounts. So we got to take a look at how to add an account. We got to take a look at how to remove an account or delete an account, right? Like as we mentioned before, never delete, you're always to inactivate, okay? We've also got to take a look at merging our files, okay? Merging our accounts, right? So let's see what comes next, okay? And then this one says here, recording the account list. So of course, when we're doing this, you want to take a look at the chart of accounts as a report or just as a list itself. Yes, and you can view them all at once instead of looking at the chart of accounts itself, because by this, right, we're able to enter in transactions as we are looking at our chart of accounts. But if you want to look at a report style or making a printable copy of your chart of accounts, you can also do that as well. We're going to go ahead and go all the way up to the menu bar to the reports, and we're going to go ahead and drop down to list. And what you're going to notice is you have the account listing report. Once I click on that, it's going to give me a detailed list of every single account number, account name, what kind of account type they are, what kind of balance they are, and what the description is for each and every single account. Okay, so here, this is how you can double check to make sure that from your chart of accounts, and that you have like a physical copy of it, you can ensure that you've entered in every single account that you need in order to be able to record your transactions. Okay. So then let's see what the next step is. Okay. Of course, I'm not going to turn off my account numbers because it's pretty straightforward. I like to use them. It's a great way to keep track of your transactions. But if you do not necessarily need them, then you can go ahead and turn them off. It's pretty straightforward. It's the same steps that we turned them on for, except this time we just turn off we just unclick that little section right there, and you're going to turn them off. Okay. Now here I'm going to go ahead and introduce another few things that we have available on our lists. Okay, and some of these things that we can talk about today, but most of these ones are going to be things that we are going to be able to take a look at later on. Okay. Later on in the chapters. So as we go ahead and take a look, if we go up to the lists on the menu bar, okay, and it drops down to all these other lists that exist. The chart of accounts, which we just already talked about. Tomorrow, or in chapter 7, is what we usually take a look at items list, right? This is where we're going to be setting up how to utilize items to sell our products. Okay, so that's going to be tomorrow, chapter 7. So I'm not going to show you that today. Okay. Fixed assets. Okay, this one's going to be a list of all your assets that you purchase, of course. This one is going to be more geared towards setting up your accounts in detail. So making a list of them and being able to set up what you want to, what items that you have that are currently in your books itself. All right. I'm not going to talk about that today. Price levels. Price levels. We'll talk about this in chapter 2 when we talk about or actually not chapter 2. Chapter 4, when we actually decide when we have our vendors, what these price lists does is it actually categorizes your vendors into specific categories. All right. So for example, right, you can charge certain people certain price levels. For example, right, you can charge commercial clients or commercial vendors a higher price. Or if, let's say, you are working with a nonprofit organization, right? You can't charge them, or you shouldn't charge them as much as you would for an actual corporation would. Okay, so we'll take a look at that in chapter 2 and chapter 4. Sales tax codes. Sales tax codes, something what we're going to talk about in chapter 2. Okay, sales tax codes is pretty straightforward, right? When you're dealing with your specific customers, they kind of fall into categories that allow them to either be tax exempt, or they have the options where you can choose to tax them or not. So for example, right, if you are a veteran, or you participated in the U.S. Marines, you do get a little tax deduction there, or you get a special tax right there, right? Another example that you can also use is for services. Services, you're not actually supposed to tax on services, because the potential of that is that you're able to it's the time that is involved. It's not a product itself that you can charge a sales tax to. It's based on either an hourly service, or it's based on time. All right. So those ones you can't technically charge sales tax for. All right. Another example too here is, for example, you grocery stores, right? All foods are tax exempt. Okay. So those are going to be sales tax codes. Class list. Class list is definitely, we're going to see something that we talk about in chapter 4. Class list allows us to separate our income expenses based on either line of department, profit centers, locations. Okay, so what I mean about this is it will make more sense in chapter 4 why we use classes, right? It's a great way to be able to separate our expenses, and also to even keep track of our profitability based on, for example, in Academy Photography, they use locations, right? We have a store in San Jose, and we have a store in Walnut Creek. So we use classes to separate our expenses and our income, so we can match our profitability against our stores, so seeing which store is actually more profitable. Okay, or maybe which store is we're spending too much expenses on. Okay. Other names. Okay, so other names is actually going to be people that are not your vendors, your customers, or your employees. Okay, A good example of another name is going to be your boss or the boss, okay, or the owner of the company. The owner of the company, the partner of the company, the significant other of the owner of the company, anybody that isn't or that does not fall under the category of a vendor, customer, or employee is going to be under the other names list. Okay. Other than that, we'll talk about other stuff afterwards in regards to the rest of those other chapters. Okay. So now that I got to take a look at a few lists here, again, we're not going to modify any of them. So let's go ahead and see what is next. So the next section here says right here that we're going to set up opening balances. Now this is step number 4 in your 12-step to setting up your company file. Now, as I've mentioned before, steps 4 through 12 are going to be things that we're going to be learning throughout the rest of this class session, okay? Everything is going to be involving other chapters. So for the rest of this chapter, this is as much as I can show you. And of course, I won't talk too much about it because we will eventually learn it. But there are a few things that you should know when it comes to setting up the rest of your stuff. So for example, setting up the opening balances, okay? So as we've mentioned before, this is only necessary if your company has been existing for a long time and you decide to finally use QuickBooks to keep track of your transaction. So therefore, with that kind of information, you need to set up any year-to-date or any open balances that you currently have existing in the company file, okay? But in my perspective, we're assuming that you're starting from square one, as in you're starting QuickBooks is the day that you start your actual business. So with that being said, that's why you can go ahead and skip steps 4 through 12 because you will not need to know any of this information because it will not pertain to you. Okay. However, when you are, let's say, an pre-existing company and you are deciding to use QuickBooks, then these are a few little tips that you need to know. Okay. First things first is the best way to be able to enter in any open balances is starting with your last trial balance. Okay. Okay, whether it's from the previous year, previous month, the most recent trial balance that you have produced or created, all right? Because what this is actually is it's a list of all the accounts that exists and what their current balances are. So this is perfect. Now again, as I've mentioned this before, you can enter each open balance one at a time. Now, the only problem with that is when we move down to our sales section, or when we move down to our accounts receivable and accounts payable section, that's where it stops you there, and it tells you that you need to enter in any invoice or any bill that's associated with them. Because if you enter in a random balance in there, QuickBooks will not know who owes you the money or who you owe. They're not going to know. They're just going to know that you owe this much money. Okay? Whereas you entering each bill or entering in each invoice, QuickBooks will automatically link up the people, and it's going to know that the next time you pay the bill off, you're actually paying off you're paying the original balance that you actually owe. So again, by going to the chart of accounts, if I go ahead and show you an example by right clicking on checking, and I'll go ahead and click edit the account, what's going to happen is right at the very middle section here, you have the little option to enter in an open balance. Okay. All right. Now that's just doing it one at a time. Now, the great advantage, as if you are the accountant, is you can go ahead and do one journal entry and it's going to place on all the account balances for you. You don't need to do one at a time. You could do all simultaneously with one general journal because, again, with the accountant, right, or someone who has accounting background, they understand how the debit and credit system works. So they understand that when you start with an opening balance, by entering in a general journal entry, you're actually essentially filling in each account with a balance, all right? And you'd copy in your trial balance directly into the actual journal entry. All right, I'm going to briefly show you where to locate it though. So you go to your company on your menu bar and you're going to go ahead and click on that make general journal entry. Okay, now that is going to be chapter 13. Okay, so because of that reason, I'm going to go ahead and skip this opening balance because, again, understanding how to journalize something is something that's going to be taught in chapter 13. All right. Now, entering open balances for accounts, again, same thing here. You can either edit each account and add the account open balance for each and every single one, or you can just simply create a general journal entry and you'd be able to fill in multiple accounts at one time. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and skip along right here. So the next step here is to be entering any open items. Okay. So again, we won't talk about items until chapter 7. And then we won't actually start using them or entering our balances until chapter 2, 4, and 8. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and skip right along this section right here. Okay, then the next step here says that we're going to be entering an accounts receivable. So again, this is also going to be dealing with chapter 2, right? How to enter in an invoice. Chapter 4 is how we enter in a bill. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and skip right along there. Now the next one's going to be entering year to end income and expenses. So again, this is going to be chapter 4 and chapter 2. Okay, so chapter 4 is talking about all the expenses. Chapter 2 is talking about entering income. Okay. Now the next one here is going to be adjusting open balances for sales tax. We don't talk about sales tax until chapter 2 when we're dealing with our customers. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that as well. Okay. Here it is right here where we're setting up our fixed assets. So this is if you do have your fixed assets, go ahead and read this small chapter here to enter in those items in your fixed assets. Okay, this is very important because when you're dealing with this is where chapter 13 is going to come into play because we're going to talk about depreciation. Okay. And then setting up payroll and year-to-date payroll balances. We talk about this in chapter 10 and 11. All right. And verifying your trial balance. Your trial balance is something that we're going to take a look at in chapter 6. So there you go. We skipped a whole bunch of stuff like that because a lot of these things are going to be revolving in of chapters that we're going to be looking into the future. All right. Same thing with equity. Equity we will talk about in chapter 13 when we close it out. As part of the closing process in chapter 13. And then lastly, setting the closing date is also going to be evolved in with chapter 13 because we learn about how to close our books and lock it up for good. Okay? Now the next section here is going to be users and passwords. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and skip along because I showed it to you in chapter the following day after. So after chapter 4, we got to take a look at how to set up our users and how to create restrictions and what they have access to, as well as setting up passwords. Okay. All right. And then lastly here, it said using multi-user to single user mode. So as we talked very briefly about this, you are actually able to do this by simply going to your menu bar. Okay, you're going to go to File, and then it says right here, switch to multi-user mode. What does that mean? All right, it just pretty much entails that when you activate this, right, it means that you're going to allow multiple people to have access to the exact QuickBooks file, right? So, but first off, we need to be able to set up those users first, and then we're going to be able to share and have people have access to this file. Now, given this, there's a few IT that needs to go along with this because it deals with networking. You need to be on a shared network, all right? Most common example is you're sharing the internet. That is one common network that you share. So oftentimes this is only necessary, or usually this only happens when you are in the office setting. All right. If you are at home and then you have your office setting, most likely you're not able to have your multi-user selected on at one time because unfortunately you can't have remote networks. It has to be on one single platform. So that's a little IT that you need to understand here in order to understand how to use multi-user platforms, okay? Right now, I'm under single user, meaning only me and only me has access to this file at one time. But if I were to be in the office setting and I open up that multi-user platform, what's going to happen is that means multiple users can be working on the same exact file, updating their transactions simultaneously. All right. And of course, we can go, and of course, we reach the end of chapter 12, and we've already gone over the review questions. So, without further ado, that's it for chapter 12.